All right, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Untherapeutic. Super excited today. We got Joseph Wilson, another fellow therapist, is going to talk about a subject that I'm super pumped about because it comes up so much in relationships, and all of us have really experienced it or the lack thereof. But before we get into the topic, I want Joseph to kind of share a little bit about himself. And man, obviously they always say as another therapist, especially as a Black man, they always say, "Oh, unicorn." So I want to hear a little bit about how you even came into this space. I love to hear just, man, your journey to becoming a therapist as well.
Oh, most definitely. What's up, everyone? My name is Joseph Wilson. I'm a marriage and family therapist here in the Nashville, Tennessee area. And I just really have a heart for people. I
Mhm.
started off in community activism work and also education for students. And just from my experience working with the kids and their parents, I just felt a really big calling to want to help people further. Not
Mhm.
just the conversation you may have here and there where you can listen and you could tell someone just needed to talk. I wanted to go beyond that. I wanted to really be able to walk people through their situations and circumstances, mainly families and couples. And so I decided to go to grad school for that. And like you said, I am one of, it's a few, there are very few Black males in the therapeutic space. And even
Mhm.
in my class, there were only 3 males out of 50. So
Mhm.
even if you take that number, if you look at those males who are under the age of like 50, I was
Yeah,
the only one. So even if you think about that, I just wanted to feel the disparity and be a solution for our community.
that's good, man. That's good. You're right. It definitely isn't a lot. So, man, appreciate the work you're doing, and I know you're making an impact down there in the Nashville area. So let's dive in. The topic today is appreciation, and so many people I talk to talk about not feeling appreciated in their relationship, you know? And it's interesting because you'll have a man say, "Man, I don't feel appreciated." And at the same time, his spouse will say, "I don't feel appreciated." Or a woman will say, "I don't feel appreciated," and vice versa. And so it's possible for two people to operate and not feel appreciated, even though the other person at times may appreciate them. So it's crazy how this works. So I want to kind of dive in a little bit. Man, tell me a little bit, why is appreciation so important in relationships?
It's one of those interactions that is like the grease that you need to smooth things over in your relationship.
Mm,
Yes, there is a need for communication, setting boundaries, voicing your opinion, but there are things that make life easier.
mm,
Listen, life is tough enough. There are going to be challenges that you're going to face that's outside of your partner that you're going to need to smooth things over,
mm,
make life a little easier. And I believe appreciation, just like compliments, make things better. And
mm.
when you don't have that, it's noticed. It's one
Yeah.
of those things that you can start to feel. You
Mhm.
can, you start to have your actions start to change.
Yep.
And
It's like you used to, that used to stand out to you. Now it just you taking it for granted.
yes, yes, but it's one of those things that I believe is needed to enhance. It's an
Mm,
enhancement
yeah.
for a relationship, especially for a couple, because life is hard. That's the thing. Like marriage and relationships aren't just smooth sailing. Just because you have the nice bubbly feeling doesn't mean that it's always going to be there. There are going to be challenging, tough times, and there are going to be interactions, especially living with someone day to day. You're going to
Mhm.
need something to make things smoother. And I believe appreciation, that verbalizing, will make things a little smoother.
Why do you think so many people don't feel appreciated?
Hmm.
I mean, if we
Hmm.
know, I mean, again, if it's not rocket science to say appreciation is important in relationships, but inevitably, if we were to just take a unanimous survey, I almost guarantee that the majority of couples, at least one person, would probably say they don't feel appreciated. Why do you think that's the case?
I got two things. One, they very well may not be being appreciated. It
Yep.
may not be happening
Mm,
because think about it. Relationships, the idea, the construct of relationships works really well.
Mhm.
So when you get into relationship, you do all these things initially to form the relationship, but because now you have the safety, you have consistency, you have reliability, you start to pull back on some of the things that you used to do to try to connect, enhance, and get closer to your
Mhm.
partner. Show them that you are really interested. Show them that you really appreciate them. Show them that you really want to be connected. And
Mhm.
over time, that stops and it doesn't happen. The second thing that came to mind is that their partner is attempting to appreciate them in ways that do not match their partner.
Mm.
So if
Okay.
there's a certain way that I value and I like being appreciated, if my partner's not doing it, their effort is not going anywhere. It's not being received well.
Yeah.
So that's what I can see being two of the primary reasons for why people may say that they're not being appreciated. One, they very well may
You're
not be.
not. You're not.
And
Yeah.
then two, what is coming at them, the efforts that their partner is making is not matching what their view of appreciation is. And that has to be considered.
Do you think it's as simple as, because I agree with you 100%. A lot of times the reason there's a disconnect between I appreciate you and I feel appreciated is the way that we're showing our appreciation. Do you think it's as simple as just asking, how do you want to be appreciated? How do I show you that I'm appreciated? Or do you think it's more complex than that?
I think it's definitely complex, but it doesn't have to be difficult,
Mm.
meaning that there are steps and processes to go about learning what your partner views as appreciation. And then you have to trial and error until you get it right.
Mm.
You're not going to get it all the time on the first explanation. It may require multiple conversations at date night during times where you're not in contention with each other to discuss what it is that I want and need as far as appreciation.
Yeah.
That's the complex part. Are you willing to go through the steps and processes to learn what your partner needs as far as appreciation? And are you willing to put what you may want to do to appreciate them aside and prioritize what they need? That's
Yeah.
that's complex.
It
That's
is.
the hard part.
Yeah, and that makes sense, man, because you're right. It sounds simple, but just kind of putting myself in the situation where you're having that and you're like, man, I'm doing this, I'm doing this. It is that trial and error, as you said, in many ways. And when you are making an attempt and it's not landing how you thought it would land, it can be discouraging for sure.
And here's another thing, even once you start doing it, it may feel artificial at first
Mm.
because it's something you haven't maybe done consistently or accustomed to. And that's okay. Acknowledge that. Tell your partner, hey, I'm having difficulty trying to learn how to do this right. I really want to um, show you appreciation in the way that you're doing it. Have some grace with me, or give me more information about what you mean when you say you prefer this versus that. That's the part where we have to be patient. Both people have grace for each other
Mm.
in order to get what each other needs.
Yeah. Yeah. When you think about this conversation, and again, I'm like putting myself in the I guess you could say in the shoes of many of the couples I work with. Is one person brings up them not feeling appreciated, inevitably the other person will talk about what they're not getting. And it's sometimes hard to have these productive conversations because it's almost as if I can't say what I need without you saying what you're not getting. You know what I'm saying? And so what advice would you give to people who are in that dilemma where they can't even vocalize the lack of appreciation, or they're, no, man, I don't feel appreciated, without their spouse kind of turning around and say, well, how you not feel appreciated? And here we
It's
go.
it's the you do it too. It's the
Yeah.
it's the you do it too. So here's the thing. It's going to require maturity, and you are going to have to remind yourself that this is someone that I love and I care about
Mhm.
going into a conversation like that. Next, at some point, you and your spouse partner should have a conversation about how we have tough conversations. Have some ground rules. Have some parameters around how we are going to operate. People have different responses to receiving tough conversations. So we want to make sure that we focus on the thing and not just focus on how I'm feeling about what you're saying. That's a process that you have to talk about and discuss before you're in the heat of the conversation.
And that's tough too. It
Yeah,
really is.
and here's the thing, and here's where I land on it. We need more relationship education. We need to be taught that going into a relationship, negotiate how we have conversations with each other about major topics, about life-changing decisions. Let's get on the same page before we even decide what it is we need to do, so that our feelings and emotions are not dominating the conversation.
Yeah.
Because I've seen even parents who are, and I've seen it multiple times, parents who have a understanding about how we communicate during tough times. It is easier for them to make a decision about their children versus the parents who have not had a conversation about how we talk about tough things. And now we're trying to figure out, what are we going to do with our child? I've seen the stark difference. I've seen it. So having an approach to tough conversations, one of the rules can be like, hey, let's talk about one subject at a time. And it's going to be how I feel when you don't verbalize appreciation for me. Let that be the one topic. Before we turn around and say, well, I don't feel appreciated when you don't do this. That muddies the water of what we're talking about. And it, in a sense, can minimize what your partner is feeling, what your spouse is feeling. And we don't want to do that. We want to acknowledge each person, and it's going to take patience and time to have the conversation. We can't just rush these things. We have to hear one person's side, discuss it, hopefully come up with a solution. We love each other. This is where I keep falling, Dr. Hardy. If we love each other, then our motivation should be to get back on one accord. That should be the driving, motivating factor, not to be right, not to one up my partner, not to be the one who gets to make the decisions, but to be on one accord with your spouse. And
why is it so difficult for our because like someone listening could hear that and agree and say yes. And as soon as they're in the conversation, the emotion, the feeling of it becomes so strong that it goes out the window. How do you kind of check your own feelings in those moments?
Self-awareness. And what I mean is, try to make it a regular practice to check in with yourself. Have some time to be able to identify what feelings and emotions I have. If you are at work and you have a very contentious conversation with a colleague, take some time to process that. Don't just blow it off. Don't just go vent to somebody. Be like, hey, I didn't like the way that conversation felt. What was it? The way she was talking to me reminded me of my mother. So that's why I was triggered and activated. Let me put some type of skill, some mechanism in place to manage that. So when we have the conversation next time, I don't blow up. I don't say things that I don't really mean. It has to become part of who you are and your lifestyle to check in with yourself. Have ways to be able to better regulate your emotions during tough conversations. That's a skill that you're going to need whether you're married and in a relationship or not. You're going to have to be able to manage your feelings and emotion. And that takes time, practice, repetition. So that when you are talking with someone that you love, you don't say things that you don't really mean. You don't.
If someone's not in a relationship, how can they practice that? Because again, if you're in a relationship, you're going to get plenty of practice because inevitably your spouse is going to say or do some things that kind of trigger you. But for someone that's not, in a relationship, obviously there's still relationships that they're involved in, whether it's friendship at work. But what additional tips, you say checking in with yourself. What else can someone do to kind of help or to practice regulating their emotions? Because you're right, man, this is something that is going to be critical to your success.
So since we're now in the tech age, we're all connected to our phones. So many people are overly stimulated, which makes their emotions either feel more intense or they're expressed more intensely. So, one of the things that I really try to push people to do is take some time to get out in nature. Very practical. Get outside of your space because guess what? There can be triggers that are in your home that prevent you from being able to really check in with yourself. Get outside in nature. Go take a walk. Be alone with your thoughts. Ask yourself, literally, and people think it's weird to talk to yourself, but it's rather healthy, especially when you're trying to figure out problems or trying to better understand yourself. How am I feeling today? What feelings and emotions am I still trying to grapple with? Ask yourself those questions. And strangely enough, things come to mind. Our brains are magnificent. When you ask it something, it'll think of something. It'll try to
Something will
figure it
come up.
out.
Yeah.
And I don't think enough of us take enough time to get away from the technology, get out of spaces where we may be triggered and be alone with ourselves long enough to figure out some of these questions. I think most of the questions we have about ourselves, we can actually answer if we're able to mute all the extra stuff. There's a lot of extra noise. You have the voices from your family when you were growing up. You have voices from past partners that didn't work out. You got voices from your boss, that coach that didn't believe you, that whoever. We have all those voices coming, and it's hard to silence them. I love getting out in nature. I love being outside. That is one practical way to be able to get out. That vitamin D from the sun helps your brain work a little bit better. You get some endorphins and you can think about your thoughts in a more positive and productive way.
That's good, man. And it's something that we can all do. I mean, at the end of the day, there's oftentimes these overlooked practices that pay tremendous dividends. The thing is, we just don't do them because we're looking for this complex. It got to be deeper than that. know, you were talking about like how you're going to have these difficult conversations. And some people, I mean, having that conversation or at least initiating that conversation is tough. For people who are in that situation, like if you were trying to, I don't want to say guess, but how would you be able to tell if your spouse didn't feel appreciated? I mean, it's good if they can come to you and say, hey, baby, I don't really feel appreciated. But truthfully, that's a huge step for some people to be able to articulate that. And the reality is sometimes that only comes up amidst an argument when they triggered or upset. It's kind of like they get that courage to now tell you what they have a problem with.
So
What are those signs?
a lack of enthusiasm. They're not as excited to connect and do things with you. That spark that they used to have when you say, hey, let's go take a walk isn't really there. It's more of a, okay, I guess I'll go because I probably have to. Like, it's one of those things. It's a lack of enthusiasm. Two, you kind of mentioned it. They complain about it. Hey, you don't say this. I don't feel this way. That's one of the things. They'll verbalize their dissatisfaction, and there's going to be a decrease in emotional connection. There's gonna be a sense and a feeling of distance that you're going to notice, and you're going to wonder what's going on. Why is it? I may be checking all the boxes. I took out the trash. I fed the kids. I helped bathe. I went and got them. I did homework. Why is there still seems like an attitude? It could be because of a lack of appreciation.
That's real, man. That's real. Because we do go through that mental checklist. You're like, okay, I'll put gas in your car, trash out. Like, you're almost like, what else you want? But being intentional about appreciating them for some of the things that they're doing. This comes up so often, man. And this is like, in my opinion, a major misconception. And that is appreciating people for things that they technically should already be doing. A lot of times people feel like, why? I mean, you should be doing that, and yes, you should, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you still don't need to be acknowledged or appreciated for it. Man, give me your thoughts on that.
For one, what is the motivation behind that statement? Like when I hear that, why should I appreciate, think about it, my spouse, my life partner for things that they should do? To me, that doesn't have a positive connotation to it.
Hmm.
Yeah, yes, they should be doing it. But here's the thing, and here's an analogy I have. And like I said earlier, appreciation helps make things smooth in the relationship. So think about the piston rings in your engine. They will work without grease.
Hmm.
They will. You can actually go pretty far. But over time, because of the natural wear and tear, there's going to be heat, there's going to
Hmm.
be friction, and eventually it's going to break down. And
Yep.
you'll have to buy another one. Putting grease on the pistons on your engine smooth the constant friction that happens in day-to-day life. You need that. Yes, they're supposed to do all those things. Yes, they're supposed to take out the trash. Yes, they're supposed to wash the dishes. Yes, they're supposed to cook the food, pick up the kids. It still means something. It still can bring you closer together to appreciate someone for things that they should already do. And matter of fact, I would even dare say, I appreciate you for being a person of your word, because most likely you agreed to do these tasks. You
Mm.
agreed to be in relationship with me to do these things. Thank you for honoring. I appreciate you honoring your word.
Yeah.
If anything, we should
Yeah.
appreciate people for doing things that they already do, because it's a sign that they're honoring what they said.
Yeah. That's
Like,
good.
we don't think of it in that way.
Mhm.
It's something that can reduce the friction. There's going to be stuff that happens.
Mhm.
So many times, like Nashville's getting busier and busier.
Mhm.
Imagine if you were going to go pick up your kids and you couldn't do it and you asked your partner to go ahead and pick them up and they do. Saying thank you is still well received, even though that's their kid.
Yes.
You're expected to pick them up. Why should I have to say I'm appreciative of you getting them when I couldn't, when that's your kid too? Listen to how that sounds.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound connected. That doesn't sound like you're on one accord. It sounds like sometimes there's expectation.
Yeah.
And we know expectations can be the downfall of a relationship, or we're taking people's support and help for granted.
Mm.
That's
Yep.
another thing. You're supposed to do it. You said you signed up. You said you want to be my wife. You said you want to be my husband. You said you're going to do it. So I shouldn't have to appreciate you. Yes. And it can make your experience a whole lot better when you do express to them how much you're appreciative.
Why
So
do you
that's
think
what I
it's
think.
so hard? Man, that's a great answer. And I didn't even think about it like that in terms of someone honoring their word, but you're right. And the truth of the matter is, oftentimes, unfortunately, it's not until we're with someone who doesn't do that that we appreciate the things that this person did without giving thought to it, unfortunately. But for the individual, like, why is it sometimes so hard? Because if you really, like, let's just be honest, if you really think about it, me saying, hey babe, I really appreciate you getting the girls ready in the morning. It probably took me like 5 seconds. You know what? But it really can go a long way. Why is it so hard for people to just take that extra 10, 15 seconds? Let's just say they laying it on thick to just acknowledge and appreciate their spouse. Why do people struggle with that?
A lot of people are on autopilot.
Mm.
Like I said at the beginning, the construct of relationships work really well. And if you
Mhm.
find someone that you're compatible with, then unfortunately your brain starts to prioritize other tasks that it views as more important than things such as appreciation. Think
Mm.
about it. If I was having tire trouble and we got the tire fixed, but I don't have any oil, I was looking at the tire first, not necessarily the grease that I need to keep the engine running. Sometimes people lose focus of the
Mm.
things that make relationships feel the experience be better. We miss those things because we're on autopilot. We're either moving too fast, we're not taking enough time to slow down and really live life. I think we're in this hustle and bustle grind culture. That seemed to be the new thing now. We're in grind culture,
Mhm. It is
but you
grind.
didn't but you forget to take 15 seconds. Hey son, thank you for getting that trash for me. I didn't do it last night.
Yeah.
Mom ain't realized that you had my back. Hey, I appreciate
Mhm.
you. Thank you.
You're trying to
Like
wait a
stuff
whole
like
week
that.
with the trash up to here, so
Right, right. So I think we're just moving way too fast
yeah.
in life. And when we move too fast, we miss the small things that make a big difference in relationships because we're with people.
Mm.
We're with people. So when we move too fast, we miss those.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. And I hate generalizations around like men versus women. But do you
Mhm.
think, generally speaking, we receive appreciation differently, or do you think we receive it pretty similar when you think about ways to show appreciation for towards a man versus ways to show appreciation towards a woman?
I believe that it's as many people are on the earth, that's however many different ways there are to show and receive appreciation. I haven't seen a clear men prefer this type of appreciation. I even like talked to my friend group and they all have different ways in which they verbalize being appreciated. Cause I asked them this question, like, hey, how do you feel appreciated by your wife, by your girlfriend, whatever? They all gave me different answers.
Mm,
So I'm not of belief that, hey, men, only way you can show appreciation for a man is physical touch. The only way
yeah,
you can do it with women is
it
appreciation.
won't
What's
hurt,
it?
but
Right. What's important is that you take time to explore and
yeah,
discover what your partner views as appreciation. Be willing to have those conversations. Be curious about it so
yeah,
that you can learn more about them. And here's the thing, the way that they feel appreciated may change. You
mm,
may do one thing for 2 or 3 months, and maybe 2 or 3 years it worked, but in year 4, year 5, they need something different because
mm,
life changes, people change, and that's to be expected. But just
mm.
be willing to continue to be curious about how they view appreciation, what makes them feel appreciated, and then do it.
Yeah, you're right. It's so amazing how we change and evolve over time. I think so many times we get stuck in the old version of the person we're with. And it's like, oh, it used to be exciting when I did this. It's like, yeah, but I'm not that person anymore. Man, being curious I think, can solve so many issues because, again, the more curious you are, the more questions you ask, the more interested you are, the more you learn, the more you can do with the right information. I mean, there's so many different layers to just simply being curious.
And think about what that requires. That requires me to not overvalue my opinion of appreciation and what it should look like and prioritize my partners.
Yeah.
That's going to take me stepping out of the way. That's
Mhm.
going to require me
Which is tough.
being willing to actively listen. It's going to
Mhm.
require me to then plan and do the steps or whatever is needed for appreciation and then continue to explore and ask questions if I fall short or if I don't understand. That's a me thing. We get in our way of showing appreciation sometimes. So
Yeah.
yeah.
No, that's good, man. It's interesting. I was asking about the appreciating your spouse for things that they should be doing. I feel like that's one of the big misconceptions. Another misconception, in my opinion, is people fear that if they do kind of shower their spouse with appreciation, they're going to become comfortable and somehow stop doing the thing. It's like I don't want to. I don't want you to get too the big head too much, or I don't want to. What other misconceptions do you believe prevent people from really showing appreciation?
Oh my goodness. And even speaking to that point, we kind of were speaking offline about the differences between people who are in the field and who are not. The
Hmm.
research says that appreciation actually reinforces behavior.
Oh, it
it,
does.
it reinforces. So if you want them to do something often, then you praise them every time they do it. Like
Yep.
you catch them how no matter how big or small, you reinforce that behavior because guess what? People are going to do it because they like
Hmm.
that response. So
Hmm.
definitely. And we were talking about myths that it takes a whole lot of energy and effort to show appreciation. It really doesn't. What it takes more than anything is intentionality. Even the misplaced efforts are appreciated. Like
Yep.
at times, like even if you tried and it didn't go exactly how you planned, like
I appreciate you
people can
though.
people can tell. People, their hearts are softened when they see that you made a genuine effort.
Mm,
Like, unless you're just a stone cold, just I can't stand you, your heart is going to be moved by an effort in the right direction to try to do it. But it doesn't take a grand scheme. Sometimes people don't try because they think it requires so much. But the
yeah.
misconception for sure, it doesn't take a lot. Like you said, it literally took 5 seconds, but you
Hmm.
have to be intentional. It can't just be anything random. It
Yeah.
has to be what matches them and then follow through. So I think that's one of the major misconceptions
That
about.
intentionality is big because you really have to pay attention to be intentional, which going back to your earlier point of just kind of pausing and, you know, reflecting and just not being on autopilot can really contribute to you being more intentional about some of the small things. So
Hmm.
yeah, man. Anything else stand out? Because again, it's just amazing. I'll be talking to couples and I'll just ask them, well, tell me what you appreciate about him, or tell me what you appreciate. And you will see this spouse, their face just
They'll do
light up.
this.
You know what I mean? And it's like, man, you didn't have to pay me to do that. Like, you really could have saved some money and just took some time to say, you know what, baby, you know what, man, I really appreciate when you do this, when you do this. This is what it means to me. This is how it goes so
Mhm.
far. It's so simple, but yet it is underutilized.
Yeah, and I think it goes to the lack of relationship education. Like, I think if more people realize the seriousness
Mhm,
and the impact that appreciation can have on their relationship, I think they would do it way more.
mhm,
I think they would, because we want to do things that enhance our experience in relationships, not make it worse.
mhm,
So I think if people are really making a genuine effort, putting appreciation in that equation, I think people are going to be willing to do it. And once that happens, I think we'll have different experiences in our relationship. And you have opportunity to smooth out the rough patches before they become mountains.
yep,
So much of what happens is a buildup over time with no way to chip at that mountain. We
mhm,
need some mechanism to smooth over when we're having rough weeks at work.
yep,
Something
you're right.
to smooth things over when your kids are getting on your last nerve. Like, you need
Mhm,
something, and your spouse, your partner can be the one to inject that. I mean, think about it. Like, that's part of why you got with them. You have
mhm,
someone to be that person who's always looking out for you.
mhm.
Appreciation said, man, I saw what you did. I appreciate that. I recognized, I saw you, that
Yep, I
you
see
did
you.
this thing. I
Mhm,
see you. That's the recognition part is what, ooh, how do I say it? It gives jet fuel. It,
mhm.
it, it propels. It's a good feeling. It releases endorphins. Like, you feel all the good things. So why not include that as a regular part of your relationship?
Yep. Yep, man. Joseph, I appreciate you taking time, man, to dive into this topic. Where can people find you at online?
Oh, no problem. You can find my podcast, the Love Unscripted Podcast, on all streaming platforms. You can find me on YouTube at Love Unscripted HD, and you can find me on Instagram at love.unscripted. That's where I post videos and I give strategies for starting and maintaining healthy relationships.
Absolutely, man. Definitely check it out. Has some great content. I appreciate it. And I know he keeps coming with new, fresh material. So if you're online, definitely follow my man, Joseph. Tune in to other episodes of Untherapeutic. Follow us online, Nic Hardy underscore. I had to think about it for a second. I'm like, where you? That shows you how much I post. That's NICHARDY underscore. Thanks for tuning in to Untherapeutic.